Is there a tube amp out there that can do it all? That'll do. Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're into guitars, related gear, and hearing out sounds when we record it, well, perhaps you've come to the right place. And I definitely think you've come to the right place today because we're checking out this awesome amplifier from EVO Amps. This is the TM50 Tom Monda Signature Handwired All-Tube Amplifier. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the mod community, you may have heard of Jaded Faith, a legend in the mod community. You know, if you got an amp that does almost everything and you need it to do that, well, they can make it do that. They've worked with a lot of pros, a lot of players in terms of modifications, repairs, and in manufacturing as well. But his hands have been in thousands of amplifiers. And in collaboration with Tom Monda, who's a ferocious player, plays with a band called Thank You Scientists, think progressive rock, fusion. If it requires your noodle and a couple of decades of woodshedding, well, that's what it's all about. Well, he wanted an amp that was diverse, that could cover off all of the tones that he wanted to pull off on stage. And bless his heart for not going for a modeler. He wanted a real amplifier, and this is definitely a real amplifier with a modification mentality. There's a lot of switches on here that can take the amp in different directions. It's got a range of tones. So what I want to do today is I'm going to take you on a journey of a bunch of different styles, from heavy metal, progressive rock, even to pop rock. We're going to utilize these 4 different guitars and see what different tones that we could pull out of this amplifier. Just have a lot of fun and see what it can do. Let's dive in. So that's a bit of a proggy tune. I'm going to get into the details of those tones in a second. I just want to give you an overview of the amplifier and how I'm recording everything today. So the TM50 is a dual channel, 50 watt all tube amplifier. We have a dual post phase inverter master volumes here. So you can set up 2 settings with each of the channels, and you can perhaps boost the second one. The second channel is only accessible via the foot switch. So in a live setting, you can have the 2 and you can have more or less of a good thing. I do find when I push the mains a little bit, it does contribute a little bit of an extra oomph to the saturation there, but by and large, you can get a bulk of the tones that this amp has to offer at all different volumes, which is awesome. So in terms of my recording setup, now all of the guitars, which are clearly noted in the video, they were all recorded direct, and I'm reamping everything. Now my reamping setup includes my Fractal FM9, which is not doing any additional processing other than signal routing. It's working as my audio interface, and it's also hosting my cab IRs. And I do add a little bit of reverb here and there, but nothing that you'd really notice, nothing that's changing the sound of the amplifier. And that's pretty much it. And in the DAW, the only EQ I'm doing is I'm lopping off below 90 and above 10, just to fit that into the mix. But all the tones you're hearing today, I'm shaping them while I'm listening to the track. That's kind of important to note because different amp reviewers do things differently. I record my amplifiers and I want to know what they do within the context of a mix. So I will give you a little taste of everything in solo. Just keep in mind that I'm twisting dials while I'm listening to my track to get it to sit into the mix properly. So speaking of which, the first tone, which is the clean tone in this kind of proggy tune that I demonstrated there, using channel 1, the clean channel. I've got the treble at about noon, middle around 1 o'clock, bass around 2 o'clock, and the volume sitting here at 2. Now this channel is extremely reactive. It's a great pedal platform. We can drive this clean channel into those nice edge of breakup tones, which I will demonstrate in a little bit. and the bright switch is on and the mid shift is on. Now I'm going to give you the specifics of what's happening here, the little scientific portion of this video. I'll leave that to the end for you nerds who want to hear about this stuff. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, let's check out this clean tone, which was recorded with my ESP LTD Deluxe Phoenix 1000 in the middle position. Let's check it out. So the second tone in this particular riff, it's a very bass dominant song. So I wanted something that was kind of aggressive, yet articulate, that would just sit nicely on top of that pretty dense bottom end. And to do that, I'm using channel 2. Now, channel 2 is an extremely versatile channel. There's a lot going on here. It has its own gain and volume control. All the different gain stages you have in this amplifier just creates a lot of opportunity for different types of tones. And a big part of this channel is the sweepable mid-range. Now, we do have a mid shift on both channels, but here we have a sweepable mid-range. Now, amplifiers generally have a very signature or a characteristic quality in that mid-range, whereas this channel here, you have that sweepable mid-range that just is an opportunity to create all sorts of different voicings. Just gives it a real range of when you can actually use this amplifier. I had a lot of fun with that, just finding that right voice that sat nicely in each track. So in terms of the settings for this particular riff, the volume is set here around 2 o'clock. Boosted that top end a little bit, where the treble is about 2. You can see the sweep here is at about 11 and mid-range at about 11. Bass sitting here at noon, and the gain is at noon. So we have a lot to go in terms of gain from this particular tone. The boost is off, the mid shift is off, and this comp switch, which I will talk about later, is off. Let's take a quick listen. So that was, of course, the Phoenix again, this time using the humbucker, which I'm also going to use for this third example. Now, just to add to the versatility of this amplifier, it receives pedals like a champ, especially this clean channel. Now, the settings here for the third example are not that radically different than what I used for the clean example just before. I'm just boosting up the bass a little bit more and a little bit more on the volume. The bright switch and the mid shift are still on in this example. But I'm using a boost pedal. I've got actually this original full tone 2B booster sitting here at around 2 o'clock. Like I said, this is a great channel for adding your favorite overdrive or your boost pedal. So again, just boosting a little bit. Now, I did shape that tone in context, but I'll give you an example of what it sounds like in isolation as well. Let's check it out. All right, now let's explore the heavier side of this amplifier. Oh man, I really, really like that tone. I'm using the Schecter C1 SLS Elite humbucker in the bridge position. That's the modern voicing. If you know the Fishman Fluence Moderns, you've got a passive and modern mode. So that is in the modern mode. Now, for you high gain players out there, if you notice the gain setting here, I'm sitting here around 1 o'clock. I'm not really all the way up, and I'm using the internal boost. Now, we could push this amp a lot more, but I wanted you to hear the amplifier. You know, when you're shaping your high gain tones, you're using an overdrive, you're using a boost, you certainly can do that with this amp, because like I said, this amp really responds well to pedals. But I wanted you to hear the amp on its own for this particular tone. So I've mentioned the gain. Now the bass is up just a little past noon, between noon and 1 o'clock here. Now the mids are up quite high, and the sweep is at around 11 o'clock. And that treble, look at that treble, almost all the way up. I never thought you could do that when I was younger. It's like the speedometer in your car. You never want to see it go all the way. Well, the beauty of reamping is that I can sort of kick back, I can listen to the track, and I can dial the amp in and give the tone what it needs. This is why I talk about, I want you to hear the tones in context, because that's how I'm shaping the amp. I will let you hear it in isolation in a second, but that treble is all the way up. A volume sitting here at 2 o'clock. Did I mention? Yeah, the mid shift, and I said the boosts are on. So let's take a listen to that tone. All right, let's see what the EVO TM50 can do in a more classic rock style. All right, so for that track, I'm using my number one. That's my Gibson Howard Roberts Fusion, using the humbucker in the bridge position. More of a classic rock sound. I like that big open sound. I mean, it's a semi-hollow body to begin with. You know, I wanted to have a bit of bite, but not too much distortion because I want to have good articulation. I want to hear the notes. So again, I'm using channel 2 here. Now the gain, look at the gain. We're only sitting here at about 9 o'clock, so not a lot of gain coming from the amplifier, yet we're still getting that big, bold sound. Lopped off a bit of the bass. The bass is also sitting here at around 11 o'clock. Mids are around 2. The sweep sort of back around 10 o'clock this time. And again, the volume, haven't been moving the volume really that much. Just generally I do that to taste. The mid shift is on and the boost is also on. Now this is funny, this mid shift, I find that I keep turning it on. It just, to my ear, it just seems to work. And I'm going to be able to explain why when I get into the details about what this is exactly doing. Anyways, let's take a quick listen to that tone in isolation. So I've got no shame here on this channel. I want to demonstrate the full range of this amplifier. So let's check it out in more of a pop rock style track. All right, so we're getting into some teletones. I used my Sir Classic T Deluxe Limited Edition. Now, the first clean tone, I processed that. Obviously, that's running through the fractal with some kind of sweeping delays and reverbs in that. So I just want to give you an example of just, you know, coloring a sound, adding different effects. Obviously, the amp responds really well. That is being processed through the fractal. Now, I should mention there is an effects loop on this amplifier. I'm not utilizing it for this particular demonstration. It is a transparent effects loop, so you can put all of your post-preamp effects, your delays, your reverbs, things like that. You can put whatever you want in there. You can experiment. But I really want to look at the two more overdriven tones. And the first one is kind of that funky bit. We're using the bridge position. We're into single coil tones. Using channel 2, again, the gain sitting back here at around 10 o'clock, bass almost at noon, just a little bit past, mids around about 1 o'clock, sweep again back at around 9 o'clock, treble sitting here at 2. That volume is not really moving. The mid shift is on again, and the boost is off. Just a good sort of single coil, telly kind of funky kind of tone. Let's check it out. And the last tone that I want to talk about is a great sounding telly into a great sounding amplifier, just edge of breakup. The signal coming out of my DAW, I'm just pushing the output a little bit just to drive the amp a little bit. You could achieve that with a boost, but really not doing much. There's no other pedals here. Just that beautiful open sound, edge of breakup. Like I said, great sounding guitar into a great sounding amplifier. I think this is probably the favorite tone, my favorite tone that I dialed in this experiment. And I really like a lot of the tones that I dialed in today. So let's just take a quick listen to it. So one last little bonus tone to demonstrate this switch right here, this comp switch. Now this adds diode clipping to the circuit. Now the effect when you're listening to it is not necessarily overly dramatic, but what it's doing, it's sort of reducing the extremities of that tone, giving a little haircut off the top, bringing up the bottom a little bit, in essence compressing that signal a little bit. Now I was a little confused by it at first because when I turned it on, I was playing chords, something didn't sound right until I tried some leads. And that's really what this is for. If you like those buttery smooth leads, you got some delay and some reverb and get some really searing lines. A little extra sustain is basically what it does. In a before and after scenario, like I said, it doesn't sound overly dramatic, but where the difference is in the feel. I really felt it playing those leads. You can just kind of feel a little bit of chewiness and creaminess in those leads. And it's just, again, another dimension of this amplifier. So I'll give you a quick little taste of that. This is a workhorse of an amplifier. In this context, using it in a studio, so many different tones. I mean, 4 radically different pieces of music with different tones. This amp was able to take care of all of that. In a live application, this amp can suit a whole range of players. But if you're the type of player that really likes a real range of tones and a real versatile amplifier, you're going to get it in the EVO TM50. So really, really impressed with those sounds. And overall, I mean, this is a high quality amplifier. I should mention this is a hand-wired amplifier as well. So this is certainly top shelf in all its components. Really nicely well-built amplifier. Everything feels high-end. The look and feel of this amp, just top-notch. Absolutely love it. All right, so for you nerds out there who'd like to know what all these switches are doing, I'm going to pump some pink noise through this amp and run it through an analyzer so we can see what all the different switches do. This is channel 1 with pink noise running through it. All dials are at noon and all switches are off. There is no cab IR, so this is the unfiltered amp signal straight into my DAW. Turning on the bright switch, you can see a cut in the low end. The green shading is the original signal, and this peach color is the signal with the bright switch on that is equal to or less than the original signal. The purple shading is the signal with the boost on where the levels have increased. So you can see there's a slight dip in the low end when the bright switch is engaged, starting at around 500K, and then there's a boost in frequencies from 500K all the way up. Now let's look at the mid shift. What it appears this is doing is actually boosting mid frequencies from about 500 Hz to 5K with a touch of a lift in the top end. This is likely why I keep using it, because it boosts the content here that you can now dial in further with the middle knob. This amp doesn't have a presence knob, so to my ear, this is providing that extra detail in absence of a regular presence knob. Moving over to channel 2, let's look at the boost. All dials are set to noon as before. Turning it on, it seems to favor the low end, giving the amp a little extra thump, and then this boost tapers off until about 5K, where we start to get an ever so slight cut in the highest frequencies. The mid shift appears to give a similar boost to channel 1's mid shift with a boost from about 500 Hz to about 5K. The mid sweep causes very dynamic changes to the amp. I've turned the middle knob all the way up so we can easily see the effect of the sweep. I'll just turn the dial and let you see what it's doing. And lastly, you can see the effects of the comp switch. There is a reduction in signal across the board, with more compression in the low end and mid range and tapering off in the high end. Well, there you have a look at the TM50 from EVO Amps, and I'm absolutely blown away. I've always wanted to own a hand-wired amplifier, and I'm so proud to have this here, and I really want to thank EVO Amps a lot for putting a lot of faith in me. We're going to be seeing this amplifier a lot of different things we can do with this amp, and looking forward to bringing it back and just seeing what else we can do with this amplifier. But I was looking around, amplifiers, of course, are not cheap, and I understand they're not for everyone, but a boutique amp, boutique brand, hand-wired amplifiers tend to be really, really expensive. Looking at the price of this amp, and I don't want to get to official prices, I'm going to put a link in the description to their site. You can check it out. But I've seen a lot of other, more boutique amps with features, if you can say similar to this, or not even close to this, that are a lot more expensive. Now, I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep the prices where they are right now. I'm not suggesting it's cheap, but compared to hand-wired amplifier, it's pretty reasonable and definitely worth checking out. Not everything is based on price, but it might be an opportunity to get into something super high-end here for something really about the same price as I've seen for production amps at retail. So check them out. A link is in the description. If you have any thoughts, any questions at all, that's what the comment section is for. What's your dream amp? I'd love to hear from you. Leave that in the comments. But if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And while you're down there, if you like checking out amps you may not have heard before, well, there's an amp that I've nicknamed the Space Amp. I'm going to put it here if you want to check it out. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. I'll catch you in the next one.